You understand here, he has the money, but if that money comes or that money goes, that's not what controls him inside. He is not controlled inside except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, we interact with people, right? No one is going to tell you that you should go hide out and never see people. We get married, this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. We have children, we have families, we have parents. We must interact. But what happens when the people are happy with you and they're praising you? How does that affect your heart? And then the next day they don't like you anymore. They're not pleased with you anymore. Now they're criticizing you. Now they don't love you anymore. I'm sorry, I don't love you anymore. I think I'm going to leave now. What happens to you? If that person was in your heart and that person controlled you inside, then when they don't like you anymore or they're criticizing you, it breaks you inside. But if those people, yes, you love them, but your heart is for Allah. Your heart is not moved by the movement of the creation. Your heart is only moved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what that means is, yes, people come and they go from your life. People are going to be happy with you sometimes. Sometimes they're not going to be. Sometimes they're going to love you and sometimes they're going to hate you. But you don't allow your internal state to go up and down with the creation. Because your internal state should be stable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Should be linked to your relationship with Him. And externally you interact with the creation. It isn't something that controls you inside. This is the goal, right? How do you get there? This seems very, it seems very hard, right? Something far off. We can't really think about how do we do that? How do we love our families, for example, without allowing them to compete with the place that Allah should be inside? I think the easiest answer to that question is by thinking of this example. You know when a little kid first sees, a really special toy. Maybe that child is watching TV and sees a commercial. And on the commercial, there's this toy Ferrari. Okay? And the child falls in love with this toy. So that child becomes obsessed. Every day asking his parents, please, can I have that Ferrari? Please, can I have that toy? Please, can I? Finally, he gets it. Now that child holds on real tight to that toy, right? Try taking that toy out of the child's hand. It's not going to be easy, right? Because he is obsessed and in love and attached to that toy. But what happens when that child grows up and sees a real Ferrari? What happens to that child's attachment to the lesser model? Now, when you try to take that toy out of his hand, is it hard anymore? No, because his eyes are on the real thing, the real Ferrari. What does that have to do with us? The reason we become so attached to this life is because we don't see anything better. We don't really see the better life. So we don't have anything better to compare it to. All we think about is dunya. All we talk about is dunya. All we compete for is dunya. It's only about how much do I have, how much do they have? What are they wearing, what am I wearing? What are they saying, what am I saying? Where am I invited, who didn't invite me? Whatever it is. Who has more status, who has less status? That's all we see. We are just surrounded by it. And so all we see is the toy car. That's all we see. That's why it's so hard to let go. That's why if you try to take even a little bit from me, I would never let it go. We aren't willing to sacrifice even a little bit of our dunya for Allah. We aren't. We can't even sacrifice, okay, I'm not going to get this interest-bearing loan. I'm not going to sell alcohol. I'm not going to dress in a way that is displeasing to Allah because that's the fashion. We can't even sacrifice seriously. When we look at the sacrifices that people before us made, and we compare it to the sacrifices that we're not willing to make, we don't even want to give up this much for Allah. You tell me to wear hijab? No, but I don't want to give up the fashion. You tell me to dress modestly, but that's in fashion. We can't even sacrifice fashion, let alone our lives or otherwise. So we aren't willing to let go even a little bit because we're like that child who only sees the toy car. It's all I have, and so I don't want to let it go. You know this thing that the youth say, YOLO, you only live once? If you think that you only live once, you're not going to let it go. If you think this is all I got, there is no other opportunity, this is it, then you will hold tight and you will never let it go, even a little bit. But if you see something better, if instead of being so consumed with this life, and you instead see that there is a better life, that there is the real version of the car, the real version of this life is Akhirah, is the hereafter. But we don't see it. Even when we read it in the Quran, it's like, we just read it with our tongues. We just have this like theoretical concept. Oh yeah, I know Jannah exists. I know there's a hereafter, but is it really real to you? Is it really something you actually think about and pray about and ask for and hope for and look forward to? Realistically, no. We're looking forward to the party we're going to next week. That's what we look forward to. It's just dunya. That's all we see. We haven't been able to see farther. That's why it's so hard to let go. But believe me, when you are given a choice between something better and something lesser, it's a non-choice. It's obvious. We're going to choose what is better. And Allah tells us in the Quran, بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. Do you prefer the life of this world when the hereafter is greater and more lasting? خير وأبقى. What is it that makes us so sad about this life? There's two things that make us really sad about this life, that disappoint us. First is that it isn't perfect. We want things to be perfect. It's in our nature. And we become very disappointed when things are not perfect. We want our children to be perfect. We want our husband to be perfect. We want our wife to be perfect. We want our job to be perfect. We want our figure to be perfect. We want everything to be perfect, right? And we get disappointed when it isn't. Khayrun. Allah is saying that the hereafter, that Jannah is greater because it's actually perfect. It's none of this, one thing goes right in your life, but something else is falling apart. It's none of that. There is no sadness and there is no fear in Jannah. There is sadness and fear in this life, right? There is definitely sadness and fear in this life, but the hereafter doesn't have any of that. And second thing that makes us sad is that nothing lasts. No matter how beautiful you are, no matter, how thin and how nice your skin is, 20 years later, you don't look the same. And you can throw all the money in the world into plastic surgery, but it isn't going to make you live forever. Is it right? And it doesn't matter if you're an atheist or an agnostic or a Muslim, you can't deny that. And it's very difficult for people to accept that. That's why we have so many products out there. All the creams and all the Botox and the plastic surgery. What's that about? We're trying to make a Jannah in this life. We're trying to make this life last forever, but it's impossible. And that hurts us in a very deep place, to think that everything is passing away. It hurts us, but that's because we only see this life. We don't see that there is a life where nothing passes away, that you don't get old, you don't get tired, you don't cry, you don't bleed, you don't get scared. You don't have to worry about anxiety and all these things that plague us. So why are we so caught up in this life? بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. Allah is asking us this question. Why do we prefer this life? He's saying, you prefer this life. I mean, it's a question, and it's a ridiculous thing that we do. We are preferring the toy Ferrari to the real Ferrari. That's what we are doing. But the reason we do that is because we're like that child who hasn't seen the real car yet. Our hearts really haven't seen Akhirah. We haven't really experienced and focused on the hereafter enough. And when you do that, through your remembrance of Allah, through your relationship with His book, with the Quran, when you start to do that, you will find naturally that this life doesn't become as important anymore. It becomes like the hotel room. It becomes like the hotel room because you know you're leaving and everything is in perspective. The reason you don't get attached to your hotel bed is because you have perspective. You know, I'm only here for 3 days and I'm leaving. But if you thought that you were staying in that hotel room forever, you would act very different. Right? How do we act with our houses versus the hotel room? Because in our mind, this house is permanent, right? So we want to decorate it and we get very attached to it, etc., etc. Our mindset is that we're staying here.